Welcome back to the sweatshop, boys and girls. Today we are working on a 2006 Nissan X-Trail. The issue with the X-Trail is specifically that the ignition was left on and the battery died. Of course, after receiving a boost, the vehicle started up normally and drove fine. Then as they were driving down the road, the stupid thing shut off, and then the cluster started to flicker like it was having a seizure. So when I got on the scene, I started the thing up, tested the voltage, and it was running at 12.5 volts, which is a bit low. As I was testing the alternator, I realized that the vehicle was making quite a high-pitched bearing type of noise. It went something like this, which was kind of alarming. So what I did was I wiggled around the two wires on the alternator to see if it would have any effect. There was minimal effect when I touched the big power cable, but when I touched the regulator wire, there was some effect. When I disconnected the regulator, the noise went away. So, boys and girls, that can only mean one thing. We have a faulty alternator. Of course, today when I started this stupid thing up, it was charging at 14 volts. So in my guesstimation, what I think is happening is when the vehicle heats up, it's killing the regulator completely, which is of course already faulty, but it is causing the issue with the heat. As a few of you guys may know out there who are Nissan fans, the 2.5 liter had a terrible design with the placement of the alternator. Catches a lot of heat from the manifold, which causes this sort of issue commonly. Anyhow, boys and girls, before we get started with today's video, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Now let's get started and change that alternator out. Now what you can do to test your alternator out and its operation is of course test it with a multimeter. You don't need something ridiculously expensive like my Fluke meter. Any $20 or $30 regular voltmeter will do the trick. Take the ground clamp, connect it to the ground side of the battery or anywhere on the engine. Take your positive lead and connect it to the battery side of the engine. Before you connect them, make sure that your voltmeter is still on. Turn your voltmeter to the appropriate setting and then connect your clamps. With your voltmeter connected, you should get a good reading such as this. You want your voltage to be at least 12.6 volts or higher. If it's higher than 13, there may be a bit of an issue unless you have the car running. Anyhow, now what we're going to do is start this up and see what the voltage is. That is the correct voltage, of course. Unfortunately, the stupid car isn't doing the problem that it was doing on the Saturday, which left my customer stranded. I'm going to try and recreate it. In an effort to try and recreate it, what we're going to do is wiggle these two wires. So as the alternator heats up, you can hear it kind of winding a bit more, but it's not to the extent where it was. And it currently is charging correctly. But we know it's faulty, so we're going to replace it anyways. Your first step is going to be to grab a 10mm socket and pull off your positive battery terminal. Move that guy out of the way. Now all you need to test your battery is a multimeter. Of course you don't need a Fluke, but of course mine came with a kickstand, which I thought was excellent and worth the extra 500 some odd dollars that I paid for this thing. In order to operate your multimeter properly, what you're going to do is turn it to the position that you need, which is the DC voltage for us. We're going to take our clamps here, connect it to the ground side, and then the positive side. You should end up with a reading of 12.6 or higher. If the battery is slightly discharged because you have had an alternator issue, that doesn't mean that the battery itself is bad. What you need to do is perform a battery test or charge the thing up to verify that the battery is good, because if the battery is bad, you'll end up killing your brand new alternator. What we're going to do now is still take the opportunity to run our smart charger so that this thing will be properly charged and we're not going to have any issues. With the battery testing all out of the way, we're going to start removing this alternator from the car. First thing you want to do is remove these 10mm bolts that hold the AC line, as well as your ground clamp and this clamp here. Well, thank you, Mr. Trucker. Now get a ratchet wrench and crank this guy off here. With that guy separated, take your fingers, clamp down on this portion here of the regulator tab and pull up and out. Then you're going to get a 12mm socket to get this nut off. Don't drop the nut like I just did. If you did what I did and you drop the nut, once you retrieve it, you can go ahead and pull your wires out of the way. Your next step is going to be to get a flat screwdriver and disconnect this little tab here that holds the rest of this regulator wire attached to this stupid bracket. In case you're wondering, that's damn near impossible to see. In case you're wondering, you got to press on this tab here from the top and then from the bottom at a 90-degree angle towards this clip and then pull it out. Once you get those guys out of the way, you can move all this bracketry and wiring down below and out of the way. Now this is extremely hard to see here, but just below your water pump is your tensioner. What you're going to need to do is get a long 14mm ratchet or wrench on it and force it forward this way towards the rad support of the vehicle. Once you get a little bit of slack, you can then pull the belt off of the alternator. Oh, come on. Well, it looks like we're gonna have to get a little bit more slack, boys and girls. Okay. Now, just remember, boys and girls, it's going to be equally as much of a pain in the ass to get this back on the vehicle. So, leave the ratchet in place. Do not lose the way the belt is put on, because if you do, you're not going to be a happy camper. If you think you're going to, or you're one of those people who might, draw a diagram before you take the belt off. Now, the only thing left for us to do is to remove this 14mm bolt here, and then the 14mm bolt down there. Once we do that, our alternator will be free, and then we can remove this bracket up top here. Favorite tool of choice are 3/8 extendable ratchet and a 14mm deep socket. With that guy out of the way, you can now work your way down to the bottom bolt, which is quite long. So you're not going to twist it out all the way with this. What you'll need to do is switch to a ratchet wrench or a shallow socket. Now, pull your ratchet out and switch to a shorter ratcheting wrench or socket. Oh, don't fall off, please. Oh, this is going to take forever like this. God damn. You know what, boys and girls, I'm just going to work this off of camera because tired already. Well, I'm gonna switch to this here, shallow socket and a cool ratchet. Check this out, boys and girls. Yeah, they don't sell that very much anymore. They don't sell it at my Canadian Tire locally. That's where I got it from. But I'm pretty sure they still do have it on Amazon. Maybe I'll set up a affiliates link so that you guys can support me somehow, and I can actually make some money before I go bankrupt. Just keep cranking away, boys and girls. See if we can get it to twist a little bit more. Oh, I think that's it. Oh, god damn. Oh, there goes the bracket. Don't lose that bracket, boys and girls. It's that stupid one up top here for your air conditioning hose. Of course, if you don't have air conditioning in your Nissan, you won't have to deal with that bracket. Once it gets loose enough, you can twist it like this, and that'll get the bolt moving quite a bit quicker. Once you get it completely loose, just push it back as far as you can. You may have to remove the overflow tank, but usually, if I remember correctly, I can usually wiggle it out without having to remove the overflow tank. Okay, let's finish this up, boys and girls. Well, boys and girls, after a torrent of F-bombs, the bolt is out. As you can see there, the rust tight had a bit of a role to contribute to the pain that we had. Also, the rust tight definitely had a role to contribute to this harness. There is a clip, get out of the way, come on. There's a clip like this down here on the bottom of this bracket here in front of the coolant reservoir that will need to be moved out of the way. Of course, if you live in the Rust Belt like I do, you won't be able to move it out of the way. So what you'll need to do is just push the harness down in order to sneak this guy by. Don't have your kids around when doing that because you'll probably be using an obscene amount of profanity. Now your next step is to grab a pry bar of the 24-inch variety and then just slowly wiggle it off of the car. Essentially down here you have a dowel pin that holds it secure to the vehicle. You just need to work it slowly back and forth and it will pop off of the car. coming out, boys and girls, just slowly. Okay, once you get the bottom portion out, what you're going to do is feel up underneath here on this bracket to see how many bolts are there. They are all 14mm bolts, and there should only be 2 of them. If there's more than that, I will take my hammer or hacksaw or torches to this bracket in order to remove it. That is a joke, my friends. Do not do that to your vehicle. Oh yeah, that's nice and tight. Once you get it going, you should be able to get it off the rest of the way by hand relatively easy. There goes that compressor again. Wonderful. Okay. I don't know what the hell was holding that thing tight, but we're gonna put some anti-seize on that. Of course, remove the stupid bracket and do not mix up your bolts. Especially the top one from the alternator. They're not as long. You can kind of see it better there. Yeah, that works. Of course, with your bracket out of the way, it's now time to grab this let down piece of junk and pull it out of the car. Now, off to the rebuilder with this junker. Well, boys and girls, just like that, about 2 seconds for you and 2 hours for me, we have received our rebuilt alternator. It has a brand new pulley. This one is a one-way pulley that allows the alternator to spin down freely instead of being jerked around. It also has a brand new set of bearings, and all the internals are brand new as well. So let's go ahead and put this thing back in. First thing we're going to need to do is sneak this thing in very carefully. Get the pain in the ass bottom bolt to line up first. Make sure you put some anti-seize on this thing. And just wiggle it into place. Oh, you mother. Okay, there we go. With that guy threaded into place, we can now go ahead and put it on that bracket. This stupid thing here. Make sure you anti-seize the bolts as well. Put them on the bracket first, and then slide the whole assembly in to place. Once it is in place, go ahead and thread those guys on by hand. So it's a bit of a pain in the ass to catch this top bolt over here with the alternator completely locked in with the bottom bolt. So unthread it and let the back of the bolt, or the threaded portion of the bolt, disconnect from the back of the alternator. Then you'll be able to get in with a flex socket and you'll be able to crank this guy home nice and easily. With this guy tightened all the way home, what you want to do is just tighten it up snugly and then torque it to the appropriate torque spec. So boys and girls, I couldn't find a torque spec for the bolts up here on the bracket, but I'm going to torque them to 35 foot-pounds or 47 newton meters. Whatever you do, do not over torque them. With your bracket bolts torqued, you can now go ahead and thread the bottom bolt as well as the top bolt in for your alternator. Of course, don't forget to put anti-seize on the bolt. The bottom one can be a little bit tricky to get in. What you want to do is just wiggle it into place as best you can by moving the alternator at the same time as well as threading the bolt in. Then what you can do is grab a flex head socket like this, or you can grab a trick ratchet like I showed you in the last segment, this guy here, and crank it home. If you've used anti-seize and your alternator is completely rebuilt, you shouldn't struggle with this process. It should go in relatively easy. Unfortunately, Nissan did not understand that they could have used a little bit of a shorter bolt to make this process less painful, but why do that, right? I bet you if someone would have told them that they could have saved money by using a shorter bolt, they would have been all for it. Yeah, we still got about a ½ inch of bolt left. After the blood comes back to your hands, continue cranking. Alternate forearms, my friend, because your forearms will get extremely tired doing this process. Once it gets a bit snug, just snug it up as much as you can. You want to keep tightening it so that the metal that's in the back of the alternator actually butts up against the aluminum bracket that holds the alternator secure to the vehicle. Once it starts to get a bit tight to the point where you feel like it's hard to turn by hand, then you can go ahead and grab your torque wrench. Torque both the top and bottom bolt to 48 foot-pounds or 65 newton meters. Oh, this is going to be fun. Time to get that deep socket, boys and girls. There's that wonderful compressor again. That's that for the alternator, boys and girls. The next step is going to be to plumb all that wiring back into place. Now, before we go ahead and tackle the wiring, what we're going to do is put the alternator belt back in place so that we don't have nightmares later on tonight. Grab this ratchet, push it as far forward as possible, at the same time pulling your belt over the alternator pulley. Be very careful with this process. You don't want to get your hands stuck anywhere, because it can be very painful. Can be very painful. Now, just visually inspect the belt to make sure that it is on everywhere else in the system before you pull your ratchet wrench off. If it is not, the best time is now to put it all back together properly. And it's impossible for you guys to see, but on our tensioner, it is kind of on. So what we're going to do is use our pry bar to sneak the belt on the way. Come on, baby. There we go. Now we can pull that ratchet off. And now, boys and girls, we can go ahead and fish our wiring back into place. First thing to do is put this bracket back on. Now, of course, before you put these bolts back in and into use, go ahead and clean them up and put some anti-seize on them. Anti-seize makes the world better, my friends, especially when you are a mechanic who works on cars in the Rust Belt. Anti-seize will make your life quite a bit better. That's all I got to say about that, boys and girls. It's the truth. Don't underestimate the power of this goopy copper stuff. There's nothing wrong with the aluminum stuff. I just like the copper stuff because it tends to have a little bit of a higher temperature rating, which is better because then I don't have to have 2 jars of this stuff. Just have the one and go for it. Plumb all this stuff back into place. Remember, this long one here is for the bracket that goes here. The bracket is currently missing because it decided to go for a walk. How the hell does the bracket go back, boys and girls? See, boys and girls, one of the benefits now to... Oh, that's the ground place. Now I look stupid on camera. Anyhow, boys and girls, what you need to do is grab this guy here, put this feller back here like so. Get your long bolt, thread that contraption all back together like so. And do this guy here. Then grab your ground bolt. Let's grab your ground cable here. Slide that back into place. Now, for torque spec, I wouldn't recommend anything over 7 or 8 foot-pounds for those bolts because you'll probably break them. Obviously, nothing looser. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5, 7, maybe 8 foot-pounds there. Once you do it enough times, boys and girls, you realize how much torque that you put through with your hands. Don't forget this little cable here. Stick this back into the hole, connect your regulator, and then put your power cable back on. My alternator guy always gives me a brand new nut. I usually like to use the OEM ones. The reason being is because they're the OE size and they usually have a washer. These are the two differences here. This is the OE one on the right and this is the aftermarket one on the left. There's nothing wrong with the aftermarket one. It's a good quality nut. I just prefer this guy here. As for torque on this guy, same thing. Don't exceed anything over 10 foot-pounds. It's just too much. 8, 9, 10. All right. There you go, boys and girls. If it makes you feel any better when I'm torquing things by hand to make it more legit or internet proper, I can make a beeping sound such as my torque wrench. Beep! Now we've had our battery on charge for about the last 3 hours, I would say. So what we're going to do is remove the charger, leave it be for about 10 minutes on its own, check the actual voltage to see what it sits at, and then we will start this thing up. Here's a word of advice. You can see here there's a bit of corrosion or acid leaking out from the battery. What you want to do is whenever reconnecting the battery, never connect the battery with the ignition on because it'll cause a spark. If there is hydrogen leaking out of this side of the battery, because that's generally where most batteries leak from, you're going to potentially cause yourself a world of hurt and possible death. So, best thing you can do, disconnect the ground cable, clean up the terminals while everything is disconnected. You can pick one of these things up relatively cheap at any parts store or online. They do a fairly good job cleaning up the terminals and all the gunk and crap on it. Just twist it like that. What you want to do now is spray a little bit of battery chemical, essentially anything that's designated for greasing these terminals so that you won't have this sort of issue, or some white lithium grease is usually what I do. Remember, boys and girls, when using white lithium grease for proper application, remember to shake well. Alright, now go ahead, connect your positive side terminal first and just tighten it down. Again, no need to go crazy with the battery terminals as well. Just snug is okay. And then what you want to do to make sure that it is tight is try the wiggle test. Shake the terminal just a bit gently. If it doesn't move, you are good to go. Now, just before I go ahead and connect the negative cable, what I want to do is see what the resting voltage is of the battery. So of course, I've employed the use of my fluke meter with its wonderful kickstand. I'm going to turn it on to the DC position. Go ahead and connect the positive side and then the negative side. Well, boys and girls, look at that. We are at 12.89 volts and we are steady after about, I don't know how many minutes. I think it's been about 15 now in total. So this is a good battery as far as a voltage standpoint. So what we can do now is disconnect this, put away the kickstand multimeter, and then connect our ground cable. With our ground cable connected, snug it up, of course. With both of our cables connected, we can re-employ the use of our white lithium grease. Don't forget to shake well. And then give it a spurt over top. Close this guy down. We can now hop in the car, start it up, and see what she sounds like. Other than the crappy sounding exhaust, you can see that our alternator is currently working. It is 14.39 volts at the battery. What we're going to do now is shake those two wires on the alternator to see if it has any effect on the voltage being cranked out. As you can see, boys and girls, there is no effect on the voltage, and this thing is pumping out what is the required voltage for this vehicle to be nice and happy and stay running at all times. With everything looking currently a-okay, what you want to do is put this ducting back in place. Goddamn Nissan. And that is that. Well, boys and girls, that's all she wrote for the Nissan X-Trail. If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss one of my new videos. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. So the issue with the X-Trail specifically is that the battery was left on. God damn it. The issue with the battery, oh goddamn. Of course, when I disconnected the regulator, the howling went away all at once. Before I get into this video, So what caused the issue, guys? Oh, goddamn. I'm just wasting time. First step is going to be to grab a 10mm bolt socket. Damn it. Drain some of the energy. Let's just do that all over again. If the battery is short, meaning like before you go ahead and collect, oh fuck! Then you're gonna get a 12mm bolt to loosen that power cable up over there. Over here. Well, boys and girls, after a torrent of probably be swearing a lot. You'll probably be swelling. Come on, you fuck pile of shit. Ow. Oh, I love universal sockets. They're such a pain in the cock. Yeah, we still got about a 1/2 inch of bolt there. Alright. Giggity. It's even worse. Well, that's all she wrote for the Nissan. If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss one of my new videos. And as always, what the fuck's wrong with the camera?